Hi there, and welcome to our series of stories about animals, tales of kindness, friendship, and little heroes with big hearts. Today's story is a very special one. It's about a lonely little cat with tiger-like stripes, who discovers an injured owl deep in the woods. Together, they'll learn that sometimes, even broken wings can carry you farther than you think. So, find a quiet place, take a deep breath, and let me tell you the story of the cat and the owl who couldn't fly. Part 1. The Cry in the Trees. It was a night stitched together with wind and silence. The forest breathed slowly, like an old creature sleeping beneath the stars. Leaves rustled like whispers, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called to the moon. But then, another sound, different, sharp, a cry, not from hunger, not from joy, but from pain. The little orange cat, curled up beneath a curled root, opened one eye. His ears twitched toward the sound. It came from deep within the trees, somewhere beyond where he usually wandered. Somewhere darker. He listened again. There it was, a tiny, desperate screech. High-pitched. Fragile. Afraid, the cat stood, stretched, and shook the leaves from his fur. His white shirt, tattered from the last rainstorm, fluttered softly in the breeze. He blinked once toward the direction of his warm little nook, and then turned away from it. He walked into the dark. The trees grew thicker, the night deeper, but the sound kept calling, like a thread tugging at his chest. It was a sound no kind heart could ignore. After some time, he reached a thicket of brambles. Sharp. Wild. Unwelcoming, and tangled inside them, that was a small creature with wide, terrified eyes, a baby owl. Its wing was twisted. One foot was stuck between roots. Its feathers were puffed and shaking. And its eyes, those huge, golden eyes, locked onto the cat like a question. The cat stepped closer. The owl flinched, but the cat crouched low, voice gentle, movements slow. No claws. No sudden jumps. Just a quiet presence, like a breath of calm in a storm. It's all right, he whispered. I'm not here to hurt you. The owl said nothing. But it didn't scream again. The cat looked at the thorns, then back at the owl. This will sting, he said. But I'll be quick. And with that, he moved, paw by paw, thorn by thorn. He pulled the brambles apart, careful not to startle the owl more than he had to. A few scratches marked his legs, but he didn't stop. He worked until the last root was freed. The owl collapsed forward, weak and shaking. The cat caught it gently. Easy, he said. I've got you now. The owl didn't speak. Just leaned against him, trembling, as the wind rustled the leaves above them. Far off, the stars blinked like silent watchers, and deep in the trees, under the blanket of night, a friendship had just begun. Part 2. The Owl and the Brambles. The cat moved slowly through the undergrowth, careful not to jostle the small owl curled against his chest. The owl was lighter than expected, more fluff and hollow bones than weight. But every few steps, it let out a faint sound, a soft little squeak, like its pain was too big for its tiny body to hold in. It's okay, the cat whispered. Just a little further. He reached a low cave formed between two fallen logs, dry and hidden from the wind. It wasn't much, but it was safe. He gently laid the owl down on a bed of leaves he had once made for himself. The owl looked so out of place, meant to soar above trees, not lie broken beneath them. The cat examined the injury. One wing hung lower than the other, feathers ruffled and bent. The foot was scratched and swollen. The owl tried to move, but winced and tucked in tighter. No flying tonight, the cat said softly. The owl blinked slowly but didn't reply. It was young, maybe just learning to fly before this happened. The cat found a small cloth he'd once used as a blanket and folded it around the owl's body like a nest. Then he stepped out to gather more leaves, some moss, and a few bitter herbs he'd seen an old hedgehog chew when his paws were swollen. When he returned, the owl was watching him, wide-eyed. but no longer terrified. He chewed the herbs into a poultice, gently applying it to the swollen foot. The owl hissed in pain but didn't pull away. "That means you're brave," the cat said. Silence. Then a sound, faint. Why? The cat looked up. The owl had spoken. Its voice was soft and hoarse, like wind through feathers. "Why are you helping me?" it asked. The cat tilted his head. "Because you needed someone. And I was there." The owl blinked slowly again, as if trying to understand a language it had never heard before. The cat settled down beside it. "I don't have wings. I don't have much of anything. But I know how to stay warm in cold places. And I know how it feels to be scared and alone." The owl tucked its beak into the blanket, and for the first time since the Brambles, it slept. Outside, the wind curled through the trees. But inside that hollow log, wrapped in quiet care, two creatures who had nothing had just begun to share something that meant everything. Part 3, First Light, First Trust. Morning arrived not with sunshine, but with a gentle gray light, seeping through the cracks in the wood like fog made of warmth. The cat woke first, as he often did. His ears twitched. His eyes adjusted slowly to the pale glow. Rain had passed during the night. He could smell the damp earth, the wet leaves, the sky washed clean. Beside him, the little owl was still curled in the blanket, breathing in small, even puffs. The cat didn't move. He simply watched. Something about the owl reminded him of himself when he was younger, frightened, wounded, unsure of the world but still clinging to it. Still hoping for kindness, even when none had come. A soft sound broke the quiet. The owl stirred. Its eyes fluttered open, blinking once. Twice. Then it stretched its head forward weakly and looked at the cat. "You stayed," it whispered. The cat nodded. "I said I would." The owl blinked again. "Others don't. I'm not others." Silence stretched between them, not empty, but gentle. Like the pause between a question and the right answer, the cat stood and padded to a flat stone at the hollow's edge. On it, he had placed a few bugs, some berries, and drops of rainwater caught in curled leaves. "Breakfast," he said. The owl looked unsure, then picked at one of the bugs, eating in tiny careful bites. "What's your name?" the cat asked. The owl paused. "Luma." "Luma," the cat repeated. "It suits you." "And you?" the owl asked, shy. The cat hesitated. Then smiled slightly. "You can call me Stripe." Luma looked at the soft tiger-like stripes on his fur and nodded, as if it made perfect sense. After they ate, the cat gathered more herbs and checked the owl's wing again. The swelling had gone down a little. "You're healing," he said. "I still can't fly." "Not yet," the cat replied. "But healing takes time. You'll need patience. And a little help." The owl looked down. "I've never been on the ground this long before," she murmured. "Then let me show you how to walk," Stripe said, gently nudging her side. She wobbled to her feet. It was shaky, awkward, nothing like flight, but it was a start, and as the morning light filtered through the trees, two unlikely friends took their first steps, not into the sky, but across the soft forest floor, together. Part 4, The Feather That Wouldn't Lift. The days passed slowly, measured not in hours but in healing. The forest around them began to feel familiar, less like a place to survive and more like a place to live. Stripe taught Luma how to move on foot, how to step gently without snapping twigs, how to listen to the wind in the leaves, how to hide when danger rustled nearby. But each night, when the stars returned, Luma would tilt her head toward the sky, and sigh. Stripe always noticed. He didn't say anything, he just waited, patient as moss. One morning, after a quiet breakfast of berries and beetles, Luma stood taller than usual. Her wing was no longer dragging. Her feet were stronger. "I think," she said, voice tight with both hope and fear, "I think I want to try flying." Stripe looked at her, then at the trees around them. The branches loomed above, far. But not unreachable, are you sure? He asked. Luma nodded once. I need to try. They walked to a low hill with a gentle slope. There, the breeze played softly across the grass. Stripe stood beside her. Luma stretched her wings. The left one moved gracefully, feathers catching light. The right one hesitated. She flapped once, then twice. Her claws dug into the dirt. She ran a few steps and jumped. For a heartbeat, she lifted, then, a sharp cry, she twisted midair. Her right wing buckled. She dropped fast. Hit the slope, rolled, and came to a stop among dry leaves. Stripe was there in seconds. Luma groaned. Her body curled, one eye squeezed shut. I'm sorry, she whispered. Stripe helped her sit up. Don't be. But I failed. You tried, he said. That's not failure. Tears welled in her golden eyes. I thought I could do it. I wanted to so badly. Stripe sat beside her, brushing leaves off her feathers. You will, he said quietly. But today just wasn't the day. Luma looked up at the sky again. It feels farther than ever now. Stripe followed her gaze. That's only because you got close. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just sat, side by side, letting the wind pass over them like a promise not yet kept. And though her wings still ached, and though the sky still waited, Luma knew one thing for certain: she didn't have to reach it alone. Part 5, A Name in the Wind. The days grew warmer. The sun stayed longer in the sky, and the winds turned gentle instead of sharp. The forest began to change, not just in color, but in feeling. It wasn't just a place of danger and silence anymore. It was home. Each morning, Stripe would wake first, stretching quietly so he didn't disturb Luma. He would gather a few berries, maybe chase off a curious squirrel sniffing at their leaf pile. And when Luma opened her eyes, they'd share breakfast and a few soft words. But one morning was different. Stripe was busy chasing a beetle that had escaped his paw when Luma called out, "Stripe?" He stopped mid-step. He turned. She had never said his name before. Not like that, not without hesitation or fear, just simply, gently. Like it belonged. He smiled. Yes? Luma blinked. I just wanted to say it. Stripe tilted his head. Do you like it? She nodded. It sounds like the wind in the grass. Calm, but always moving. Stripe chuckled. That's a new one. Luma looked down at her own feet. And I like when you say my name, too. It makes me feel like I matter. You do, Stripe said instantly. Luma smiled, eyes soft. They sat together near the edge of the hill where she had fallen. Her wing was still healing, but her spirit was mending faster. Stripe nudged her gently. Want to try walking again? She nodded. They wandered between the trees, talking about the stars, the strange way mushrooms always grew in circles, and what it might be like to live inside a cloud. And every so often, one of them would say the other's name, not to get attention, but just to feel the sound of it. Luma. Stripe. Like a spell of belonging, like two lost creatures reminding each other that they were no longer alone. Part 6, The Lesson of Stillness. The forest was quiet that morning, not the silence of fear or emptiness, but the kind that breathes. That listens. That waits. Luma and Stripe sat side by side on a patch of soft moss beneath a great oak tree. The sun filtered through the leaves above them, painting the ground in gold and green. Stripe's tail flicked slowly. His ears twitched, tuned to every creak of branch, every rustle of fern. Luma, meanwhile, shuffled impatiently. I hate sitting still, she murmured. It makes me feel useless. You're not useless, Stripe said without looking at her, but I'm supposed to fly. I'm not built for this, walking everywhere, hiding in roots. Watching the ground. I'm not meant for the ground. Stripe stayed quiet, then he pointed with his paw. See that branch over there? Luma followed his gaze. Yes. Wait. A long pause, then, suddenly, movement. A squirrel darted across it, barely making a sound. Luma blinked. I didn't even hear it coming. That's the point, Stripe said. It's not always about flying. Sometimes, being still teaches you to see what others miss. He crouched lower, motioning for her to do the same. Listen. Luma closed her eyes. At first, she heard only her own breath, then the soft patter of insect wings. The distant drip of dew. A flutter, tiny, just above her left ear. A moth. Then the crack of a twig far off. Dear, Stripe whispered. Luma's eyes opened wide. How do you know that? Because I've lived here a long time, he said. Long enough to learn that quiet is powerful. Luma looked down at her claws. I always thought strength meant speed. Or flight. Or big wings and loud screeches. Stripe smiled. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is wait. And listen. They stayed that way for a while, motionless in the shadows, hearts beating in sync with the forest, and Luma realized, for the first time, that even though her wings didn't work yet, she was learning something new. A different way of being brave, a different kind of strength. Stillness. Part 7, Old Nest, New Home. The storm came without warning. It rolled in during the late afternoon. Clouds dark and low, thunder rumbling like an old bear's growl. The trees swayed nervously, their leaves whispering secrets of past tempests. Stripe looked up at the sky and frowned. We need to find better shelter. Their old hollow beneath the fallen logs had served them well, but it leaked when rain was heavy, and the wind pushed through the cracks like sharp fingers. Luma shuffled beside him, wings folded tightly. What kind of shelter? Stripe narrowed his eyes. Something that can last. Not just for sleeping, but for living. They searched quickly, the first drops beginning to fall like tapping fingers on the leaves. Stripe's nose twitched. There, he said, they came to a large tree, broken at the middle by some storm long ago. Inside the hollow trunk, the wood had dried into soft grooves. It was wide, warm, and protected. Stripe patted inside. It's perfect. Luma stepped in slowly. It smells like old bark and mushrooms. Homie, Stripe said with a grin. They began to work. Stripe dragged in moss, dry leaves, and pieces of cloth he'd found scattered in the woods, remnants of picnics or lost bags. Luma, though grounded, used her beak and claws to arrange twigs just the way she remembered nests should be built. They shaped the space together, her instincts from the sky, his wisdom from the ground. The storm outside began to howl. Inside, their tiny paws and claws moved in rhythm. For a moment, neither of them was thinking about broken wings or old scars. They were simply building something together. By nightfall, the nest was finished. A ring of woven twigs and soft padding lay at the center. Bits of glowing moss lit up the edges. In one corner, Stripe had tucked a few shiny stones and bottle caps, his collection. In another, Luma placed feathers she had lost but kept, memories, stories. The storm battered the outside world, but inside, it was calm, safe. Home. Luma curled into the nest and looked around. I never thought I'd live somewhere like this. Stripe settled beside her, tail curled close. Me neither. She rested her head on her wing. Do you think we'll stay here for a long time? Stripe smiled softly. I think we already have. Outside, the wind cried, But inside the hollow tree, beneath the old bark and new beginnings, two friends had made something that neither of them had ever known before, a place where they truly belonged. Part 8, Night Without Wings. The storm had passed, but the sky remained dark. Clouds hung low, and the moon was just a pale ghost behind them. Inside the hollow tree, Luma lay awake. Stripe was asleep, curled tightly in the nest they had built. His soft breaths rose and fell like a slow wave. But Luma couldn't sleep. Something inside her felt heavy, too heavy for her tiny chest. She stepped out of the nest quietly, careful not to wake him. Outside, the forest was damp and quiet, except for the distant flutter of wings. Bats. They zipped through the trees like shadows with eyes. Swift. Confident. Free, Luma watched them with a tight knot in her chest. She remembered what it felt like to glide. To stretch her wings wide and catch the wind. To rise above the world and hear nothing but the air. Now, she could barely hop from one root to another without stumbling. Her wings still ached, and no matter how much Stripe encouraged her, she knew she wasn't close to flying again. She wasn't an owl anymore. She was just broken. Behind her, she heard soft paw steps. "I figured I'd find you here," Stripe said, his voice still raspy from sleep. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," he said, settling beside her. The quiet did. They sat together for a while, watching the bats dance through the air like black leaves. Luma broke the silence. "They're everything I used to be." "No," Stripe said. "They're everything you thought you had to be." Luma looked down. "I feel useless," she whispered. "I can't fly. I can't hunt. I'm an owl who lives on the ground. What good is that?" Stripe didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "Do you know what I saw, the night I found you?" Luma shook her head. "I saw someone who was hurt, but didn't give up. Someone who was scared, but still opened their eyes. Someone who let a stranger get close, even when everything told her not to." He looked at her. "You think flying is the only thing that made you special. But it wasn't." Luma blinked, fighting the sting in her eyes. Stripe leaned back against the trunk. "You saved me too, you know," he said softly. "Before you came, I was just surviving. Now, I'm living." The wind stirred the leaves gently. Luma wiped her face with her wing. "It still hurts." "I know," Stripe said. "But healing isn't just for bones. It's for hearts too." They sat in silence again, not needing to say more. That night, beneath a sky full of wings she couldn't yet join, Luma realized that even without flight, that she still mattered. Part 9, The Map of Stars. The next night, the clouds had cleared. Above the forest, the sky opened wide, deep and dark, speckled with stars like scattered sparks across black velvet. The moon was full and round, bathing the trees in soft silver light. Stripe lay on his back just outside the hollow tree, his paws tucked behind his head. Luma sat beside him on a low branch, her injured wing carefully wrapped against her side. They were quiet for a while, letting the cool night air settle around them. Then Luma spoke. "Do you see that cluster there?" she said, pointing with her beak. Stripe followed her gaze. "The one that looks like a lopsided spoon?" Luma chuckled. "That's the owl's wing." Stripe glanced at her. "You're making that up." "Nope," she said, smiling. "It's real. My mother used to show it to me when I was little. She said it was a sign of protection. That even when you fall, part of you still lives in the sky." Stripe looked back up. "I always thought stars were just lights." Luma shook her head. "They're stories. Maps. Memories." She pointed again. "That long curve over there? That's the river tail. They say if you follow it with your eyes, it leads you home no matter how far you wander." Stripe traced the stars with his gaze, his face softening. Have you ever followed it? Once, she said. It led me to you. Stripe smiled, but said nothing. For the next hour, Luma pointed out shapes and names: the sleeping fox, the hollow tree, the feather ring. Each one came with a tale, old stories passed down through her family, whispers from the sky that only those with wings ever knew. But tonight, she was sharing them with someone who had never flown, and somehow, that made them even more special. Stripe looked at her. You carry the sky with you, don't you? Luma blinked. What do you mean? You lost your wings, he said, but not your stars. Luma's chest swelled with something she couldn't name. A warmth. A brightness. Like a memory being born. Together, they lay in silence, eyes full of constellations. Above them, the owl's wing glowed quietly. Below, two friends mapped their own way forward. Part 10, The Chase in the Underbrush. It began with a crunch, not the soft, natural rustle of forest life, but a sharp, deliberate snap of movement. Stripe's ears shot up. Luma, perched on a low stone nearby, turned her head sharply. Another noise, closer this time. Something, or someone, was creeping near their nest. Stripe motioned to Luma to stay still. He crouched low, silent as a shadow, and crept toward the entrance of the hollow tree. Then he saw it, a small, wary creature with twitchy eyes and a long tail, a weasel, its paws full of berries, Stripe's shiny stones, and even one of Luma's fallen feathers. Hey! Stripe called, leaping forward. The weasel yelped and took off through the underbrush, scattering leaves and bits of stolen treasure in its wake. Stripe didn't hesitate. He chased after it, weaving through tree roots and ducking under low branches. The weasel was fast, faster than he expected, but Stripe was determined. Behind them, Luma stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then she looked at the feather the weasel had dropped. Her feather, her story. With a surge of energy, she leapt off the rock and darted after them. She ran, not with the grace of wings, but with the fire of purpose. Her claws gripped the ground, her breath steady. Ahead, Stripe was gaining ground. The weasel tried to zigzag, but Stripe anticipated it, cutting it off near a fallen log. The weasel hissed, trying to slip through a tight tunnel beneath the roots, but before it could escape, Luma pounced. With a flurry of feathers and determination, she blocked the exit, her wings outstretched to make herself look bigger than she felt. The weasel skidded to a halt. Stripe pounced from behind. Together, they cornered it. Panting, the weasel dropped the last of the stolen items and slinked backward into the shadows. Stripe picked up the shiny stones. Thief! Luma grabbed her feather gently in her beak. Not brave, she muttered. Just fast. They stood in silence for a moment, catching their breath. Then Stripe turned to her, his eyes wide. You ran. I did. You chased him down. I guess I did. He grinned. You were amazing. Luma's chest rose and fell quickly, but there was a flicker of pride in her eyes. I didn't fly, she said softly, but I didn't need to. They walked back to their nest together, paws and claws touching the earth, hearts a little lighter. That night, as they placed the feather back on the nest's edge, Luma looked at Stripe and smiled. Maybe she wasn't flying yet, but she was moving forward, and sometimes, that was even braver. Part 11, The Broken Branch. It was a clear, cool morning. The rain had washed the forest clean, and the trees stood tall like guardians wrapped in sunlight. Stripe and Luma were out early, walking side by side along the ridge that overlooked a small stream. Birds chirped from high above, and for once, Luma didn't flinch when she heard the flap of wings. She watched them now, not with envy, but with quiet hope. I want to try again, she said suddenly. Stripe stopped. Fly? She nodded. Not far. Just from that branch. He looked where she pointed, a sturdy limb hanging over soft grass. If I fall, Luma added, at least it won't hurt as much. Stripe hesitated. Are you sure? Luma's eyes met his. No. But I need to know. Together, they climbed the gentle hill to the tree. Stripe scrambled up the roots first, then helped Luma onto the branch. She balanced carefully, claws gripping the bark. The wind moved gently through her feathers. She took a deep breath, and jumped. For a brief second, less than a heartbeat, she lifted, her wings caught the air. She soared, then the right wing folded, pain. Sudden. Sharp, she tumbled, hitting one branch, then another, before landing hard in the tall grass below. Luma. Stripe was beside her in seconds. She winced, her body curled, eyes clenched shut. He nudged her gently. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Just bruised. But her voice trembled. Stripe helped her sit up. One wing hung awkwardly again. Not broken, but not ready. I thought I could do it, she said. You did. No, she whispered. I fell. But you tried, Stripe said softly. You leapt. You flew, if only for a moment. That matters. Tears welled in her eyes. I wanted it to be different. I wanted it to mean I was healing. It does, Stripe said. Just not the way you hoped. They sat in silence. The breeze moved around them, slow and gentle. After a while, Luma spoke again. Do you think I'll ever fly again? Stripe didn't answer right away. Then he said, I think, even if you never fly again, you'll still be something extraordinary. Luma looked at him, her eyes wide and shimmering. You don't need wings to lift someone, he said. You've lifted me. She leaned into him quietly, her feathers brushing his fur, and as the forest swayed and whispered around them, Luma understood something she hadn't before. Falling wasn't the end. Sometimes, it was how you learned to rise. Part 12. The Fireflies' Circle. The forest was unusually dark that night, not because the moon was missing, it hung high and full, but because a heavy mist had crept in, blanketing everything in silver fog. Trees faded into shadows, and the usual paths seemed to vanish. Stripe squinted through the gloom. I don't like this. Luma, walking beside him, tried to keep her balance on the damp ground. Her wings still throbbed from the fall 2 days before, but she hadn't complained. Let's stop for a moment, she said. We'll lose ourselves if we keep walking blind. Stripe nodded. They settled beside an old stump, quiet and alert. The fog was thick enough that even their own paw prints disappeared within moments. Then, light, soft, golden. Floating, a single firefly drifted through the mist, blinking gently, then another, and another, dozens, hundreds. Within seconds, the entire glade was aglow with tiny floating lanterns. The mist didn't hide the world anymore, it lit it up. Stripe's eyes widened. I've never seen this many before. They're gathering, Luma whispered. For the Fireflies' circle. Stripe blinked. The what? It's something my mother told me about. When the fireflies come together like this, they choose a place to dance, and any creature who stands in their light is given a wish. Stripe raised an eyebrow. A wish? Luma nodded. But only if your heart is quiet enough to hear it. The fireflies swirled around them in patterns, forming soft spirals and waves. The mist now shimmered with gold, and for a moment, the world didn't feel dark at all. Luma closed her eyes. She didn't wish for wings. She didn't wish for flight. She wished for strength, the strength to keep going, even without the sky beneath her. When she opened her eyes, a single firefly hovered in front of her. Its glow pulsed once. Then slowly settled onto her chest, right above her heart. Stripe watched, silent and still. Luma looked down. It's warm. They chose you, Stripe whispered. The firefly blinked once more, then floated away. The others followed, drifting upward into the trees, leaving only silence behind. But the fog didn't return, and the darkness didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. Luma looked at Stripe. I didn't need wings tonight. No, he said, smiling softly. You had light. Part 13, the sky below their feet. They found it by accident. Stripe had been chasing a scent, something sweet and wild, like crushed berries, and Luma was following close behind, her claws careful on the mossy stones. They'd wandered farther than usual, past familiar trees and quiet paths, until the woods suddenly opened up. Before them was a lake, still, perfectly still, so calm it looked like glass. The surface reflected the sky so clearly that it was hard to tell where the stars ended and the water began. Luma stepped closer, breath caught in her throat. It was like standing at the edge of the heavens. Stripe padded up beside her, eyes wide. Is it real? Luma didn't answer. She took another step, her reflection rippling faintly below her. There, in the sky beneath her paws, she saw herself, not broken, not grounded, not weak, but whole. The reflection shimmered with her full wings, strong, spread, glowing in the silver light. Her posture was proud, her eyes fierce. For a moment, she believed it. She was that owl. Stripe looked down too and smiled. Look at you. Luma whispered, that's who I want to be. You already are, he said, but I'm still here. Still grounded. You're grounded, he replied gently, but you've never stopped reaching up. Luma sat by the water's edge, eyes locked on the reflection. The stars sparkled around her image like a crown. Stripe sat beside her in silence. Eventually, he spoke. Do you know what I see when I look at you? What? A creature who fell from the sky and learned how to rise from the ground instead. Luma's throat tightened. I wish my mother could see me now. Stripe placed a paw over hers. She does. In every feather you keep. In every step you take. They stayed there until the moon moved high, and the sky below rippled with dreams. Luma stood finally, taller than before, not because her wings worked, but because she did. And sometimes, the sky wasn't above you at all. Sometimes, it waited quietly. Beneath your feet. Part 14, the wind returns. It began as a whisper, just a gentle breeze winding through the tall grass, stirring the leaves with a sound like distant voices. But then it grew stronger, bolder. A true wind. The kind that moves the tops of trees and pulls at feathers. Luma and Stripe stood at the edge of the lake, the one that mirrored the stars, watching the ripples dance across its surface. Stripe looked up. It's been a long time since I felt wind like this. Luma said nothing. Her feathers fluttered lightly in the gusts, and her heart did the same. For weeks, she had walked, she had run, stumbled, climbed, and healed. She had cried, laughed, fallen, and risen, and now the wind had returned, as if it had been waiting for her. A test, or an invitation. She stepped away from the water's edge, toward a small rise near the lake, a hill with a gentle slope, open sky above. Stripe followed silently. Luma looked up at the branches, at the space between them where the wind moved freely. She opened her wings. Slowly. Carefully, they stretched out fully, for the first time in a long time. They didn't shake. The pain was faint now. Not gone, but distant. Like an echo, she looked at Stripe. Should I try? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, not because you feel you have to. Only if you want to. Luma closed her eyes. She let the wind move through her feathers. She remembered falling. She remembered rising. And now, she remembered who she was. Not just a bird of the sky, but a creature of courage. She took a few steps forward. Her claws gripped the soil. Her body was steady. Her heart was full, she ran, and jumped, the wind caught her, for one breathless, soaring second. She was in the air, she rose, wobbly, uncertain, but flying, then. She glided back down, landing softly in the grass, not far, but far enough. Stripe rushed to her. Luma. She was panting, eyes wide, feathers a little ruffled, but smiling. Did you see? Stripe nodded. You flew. She laughed, really laughed. I flew. They spun in a circle, joy crackling between them like firelight. Luma looked back at the sky. I don't know how long I can stay up there, she said. You don't need to, Stripe replied. The sky will always be there. And as the wind rustled the trees, the two friends stood together beneath the open sky, not as a cat and an owl, but as survivors, dreamers, and a family made not by blood, but by choice. Part 15. Home is where the wings rest. The wind faded by morning. The sky was painted in soft orange and pale blue. Dew clung to the leaves, and the world felt quiet, like it, too, had been watching Luma fly the night before. Stripe and Luma walked back through the forest slowly, no rush, no fear, just the rhythm of two friends side by side. They passed trees that now felt familiar, roots they had tripped over in earlier days, and mossy stones where they'd sat and spoken of stars and old stories. When they finally reached the hollow tree, it didn't look like just a place anymore. It looked like theirs. Stripe pushed aside a curtain of vines at the entrance. Inside, everything was just as they'd left it, the woven nest. The shiny bottle caps, the old feathers, and a new sense of warmth that didn't come from fire or fur. Luma stepped inside and paused. I always thought home had to be in the sky, she whispered. Stripe looked at her. And now? She turned slowly, eyes soft. Now I know. Home is wherever you're safe enough to land. Stripe didn't say anything. He didn't have to. She nestled into the nest. Not because she was tired or broken, but because she belonged there. Because she chose it. Stripe curled beside her, his head resting gently near her wing. Do you think I'll fly again like before? Luma asked quietly. Stripe smiled. Maybe. Maybe not. She nodded, but I'll always come back here. She said, to me? To us. The morning light filtered through the old bark. A few fireflies, late risers, glowed faintly in the corners. Outside, the forest woke slowly. Inside, the owl who couldn't fly had found her place, and the cat who had once been alone no longer was, not because she had wings, not because he had courage, but because together, they had built something that no wind could ever carry away, a home. And that was the story of the kind little cat and the owl who couldn't fly, a journey not just about wings, but about healing, courage, and a friendship that grew between two lonely hearts. Even without the sky beneath her, Luma learned to rise. And Stripe, once alone, found a home in someone else's strength. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, so you won't miss the next magical chapter in our Animal Tales series, because there are still so many stories waiting to be told. See you in the next story.